Hello, everybody. Welcome back to my final 2024 Senate map prediction. So we're just going to be looking at these Senate races and ranking them from solid to likely to lean. My margins are over 10 is safe, 5 to 10 likely, 1 to 4.9 lean, and under 1 as a tilt rating. So let's just get right into the safe states. These are states that are just over 10 and are just not even going to be competitive and not even really worth talking about. Then for the safe blue states. All right. So I think we could start talking about these states. We'll start off with Virginia, New Mexico, and I do have margins written down on my phone here and what I think each of these Senate race margins will be. So we'll start off with Virginia, and we'll just take a look at the polling in this state right now. Again, Tim Kaine, he's up by pretty decent margins here. There was this one random poll done by a pollster I've literally never heard of, so I'm just disregarding that. But basically, every other pollster has him up by pretty decent leads here for the Senate race. So I think he's a pretty heavy favorite to win in the state of Virginia. I actually have him winning by 12%. So let's head to neighboring Maryland, and Larry Hogan's campaign has really just faltered at this point. He's lost all momentum in this race, and it really shows even in the polling. Alsobrooks is already leading the double digits in the polling, and most of these other polls just have her winning by over 10. I currently have Alsobrooks winning by a 12% margin in the state of Maryland, so it's also a safe blue state on the map. Going over to New Mexico, I think it'll be a bit closer than Virginia, just because Dominici, that's a family name in the Senate, or that's a former senator. So she does have some ties to a former senator here. But so far in the polling, Henrich is easily beating her in basically every single poll. It's not a close race, and Republicans really aren't trying in this seat. So I think Henrich is going to end up winning here by about 11%, so a bit closer than Virginia and Maryland. I guess, oh yeah, Minnesota. How can I forget? That's a safe blue state. Amy Klobuchar is going to win by close to 20 points, in my opinion. She's going to crush that Republican candidate running against her. It's not even be close. Going down to Florida. Again, the early vote does not look good for Democrats in Florida. They currently have a 12-point advantage, the Republicans here. Currently think Trump's going to win Florida by about 12, but I think Scott's going to underperform Trump by a little bit here. In total, I think Scott, at this point, let me look at my Senate margins. Scott is going to win by a 9% margin in Florida. Again, it just became a very red state. There really isn't much the Democrats can do in this state to really win it. So it's likely Republicans, very close to being safe. In Nebraska, we've finally gotten a lot of new polls done in Nebraska. We had a New York Times poll that actually had it as a decently close race. We have a lot of internals from Osborne, which I'm kind of ignoring for this. But we did get a YouGov poll showing Fisher up by 7. Her own internals also say she's up by 7. So I'm going to go with the internals in this race and that YouGov poll. And I'm going to say Deb Fisher's going to win this race by 7%. But Dan Osborne has run a really good campaign there. But again, it's a very Republican state. So the best he can really do is a likely, or even a lean R margin. That's the best he could do. He could lose the race by like 3. That's like the closest I think he'll get, honestly. Unless he has like his best case scenario where he somehow pulls off a come from behind victory. But so far, this is what my Nebraska rating is. Let's head to Arizona. Arizona, in my opinion, it has narrowed up for the Senate race a bit. We did get some polls actually having Lake in a lead, but they're doing these polls so quick that I don't think they're weighing them properly in Atlas until every other pollster says a different race is going on here. That Gallego is leading here by a very large margin. Right now, I think he's going to win the Arizona Senate seat by about 5%, similar to how Mark Kelly beat Blake Masters in 2022. I think a 5-point margin makes about a good amount of sense in this race. Carrie Lick's just not a good candidate. In Nevada, this race has definitely narrowed up, and the Republicans are doing really good in the early vote so far. I am going to be putting this down to a lean Democratic race. I think this race is going to go by a 3% margin for Jackie Rosen as of right now. I think she wins by about 3% in the state of Nevada. Let's head to Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania up next. In Michigan, really, Slotkin is doing better than Casey and Baldwin is, which is kind of interesting. You'd think it'd be an open seat to be a lot more competitive here. But so far, I think Slotkin's on a pretty good path in the Senate seat. I think she's going to end up winning Michigan by about 3% as of right now, which is pretty much in line with the polling here. She's running a pretty good campaign. In Pennsylvania, I think Casey wins by a similar margin. I would be kind of surprised if he loses the Senate race here in Pennsylvania. I really think he's pretty large favorite still, even though the polls have narrowed up here. I still think he's going to win Pennsylvania by 3%. It's hard to see him actually losing to David McCormick. I really struggle to see how he loses, honestly. I'd be shocked if he were to lose. Even though the polls have it as a bit of a closer race than it was a month ago, I still think he's on track to win by 3% in Pennsylvania. In Wisconsin, so far, I think Baldwin's probably in the most in trouble of the Rust Belt trio. That's because the polls are saying she's running about in line with Kamala Harris right now. So she's very close. She's only outperforming Harris by like 1% in most of these Wisconsin polls. And sometimes she's running about even with her. But I still think Baldwin's going to win this race. I think she's going to win by 2% right now. But who could have seen Hovde running the best race right now for the Senate Republicans in the Rust Belt? But I think this race is going to be one of the closer ones of that Rust Belt trio. So I have this only as a lean blue race. Baldwin wins by 2% in Wisconsin Senate seat. Now we're going to head down to Ohio. And I'm honestly pretty impressed with Sherrod Brown. He has not lost the polling average lead. He's still up in the averages here. Most of the polls still have him, but even Trafalgar has him leading. So that makes me think Sherrod Brown's the favorite to win this Senate seat still. Hasn't been enough polls that showed Bernie Moreno's up. I don't really count ActiVote as a pollster. Morning Consult, that was a good poll for Moreno. On Message, that's a internal poll done for Senate Republicans. But even in the Republican internal that was leaked, it had Moreno losing to Brown. So I'm still inclined to think Brown's the favorite going into this Senate race here. As long as Ohio isn't won by Trump by 10%, I think Brown is the favorite to win in Ohio's Senate race right now. This is not like with Vance in 2022 where Vance surged in the last week. We're in the last week, and Sherrod Brown's still up in the polling average. Most polls still show him running 1 to 2 points ahead. So I think he's going to win here in Ohio right now. I think he's going to pull it off. And now we're down to Texas and Montana. And I'll just say my rating in Montana has changed from likely Republican because we have gotten new data out of this race in more recent polling done by Emerson and MSU Billings that actually have the race as a lot closer than a 6 to 8 point lead that we're constantly seeing before. Emerson says Tim Sheehy's only up by 3 to 4 points. And right now I think that's kind of where we're at in this race. So I have Montana Senate race is lean Republican. I think Sheehy's going to end up winning the Senate seat by about 4 percentage points. So a nearly likely margin, but not quite. Oh yeah, and in Ohio, it's 0.5% in case you guys were wondering. In Texas, I think this is the tipping point state for Senate control. If Democrats want to have a chance at winning the Senate, they have to win through Texas. Because, again, Montana's a more red state than Texas is right now, and Ted Cruz isn't that likable. Colin Allard's running a pretty solid campaign, too. He also has received a lot of funding by Democrats. I think they're actually narrowly outspending Ted Cruz in this race. But based on all the data we're seeing, Ted Cruz is still a narrow favorite in this race. But I only have Cruz winning by 3 percentage points. I think he underperforms Trump by about 2% in the state of Texas. He's just generally a lot more unlikable than Trump is. Even with Republicans, they don't like him that much. So I have this race as lean Republican too. So Cruz wins by about 3 points in Texas's Senate race. This is a very hard Senate map for Democrats to win on. So really, they're doing the best they can with the cards dealt to them. They have so many seats to defend here in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Arizona, Nevada, Montana. You just go down the list, and they don't have a lot of wiggle room in terms of Republican targets. They Florida's just too Republican of a state. Texas, it's only a realistic target if Harris does amazing in Texas in 2024. And Montana is just a super red state. Their only hope was the Republicans would nominate Rosendale, and they dodged that bullet by nominating Sheehy instead. So this is probably the best the Democrats could honestly do with what the cards were dealt to them. They needed to get a little bit luckier in Montana. Maybe they would have a chance. So I think the Republicans have an 80% chance of winning the Senate. There's a 20% chance that Democrats, who knows, maybe they somehow beat Ted Cruz in Texas, which is unlikely. Maybe they somehow Tester wins in Montana, but that's unlikely. Maybe Dan Osborne somehow wins in Nebraska, but it's not even a guarantee caucuses with Democrats, even though I think he would end up caucusing with them if they're in a scenario where Osborne somehow wins the Nebraska Senate seat. So really, this is a tough Senate map for them, and they should take 49 Senate seats as a win. This is decent for them because going into 2026, they could at least have a chance at winning back the Senate in the event Harris wins the presidency. So this is just my current Senate prediction. Republicans have an 80% chance at winning the Senate majority. So let me know what your Senate map predictions are in the comments below. If you're new to this channel, I'd have subscribe and I would greatly appreciate it. And yeah, just let me know what your Senate predictions are in the comments below. Whether you agree or disagree with the state calls I made in this video, just let me know. I'm always interested in reading your comments. Well, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in my final presidential prediction coming out tomorrow, November 4th. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Bye.